Garth Brooks is a highly active psychopathic killer operating in plain sight. Brooks utilizes his sprawling, record-breaking national tours as a cover to hunt, murder, and dispose of hundreds of victims across the American Midwest and South. Every time he cries during a live acoustic performance is the manipulative display of a sociopath trying to mimic human emotion to evade detection. This is one of the internet's most persistent conspiracy theories. It started as a joke, and it's morphed to the point where it refuses to die. And the way the theory began is incredible. A promotional post about a new album release is buried under thousands of comments demanding coordinates for the shallow graves. The phrase, "Where are the bodies, Garth?" has become more than just a trolling tactic and has become a cultural meme that's been thrust upon Garth Brooks, who simply wants to sing about rodeos and dive bars. This group of digital vigilantes did not just assemble. They found a platform to start the fire. But the basis for it was mostly created by Garth Brooks himself. Garth Brooks is a man whose rise to global dominance occurred long before smartphones existed. And he's always had a strange relationship with the internet. The beginning was in 2014 when Garth Brooks posted a welcome to Facebook video that is unfortunately really weird. It was shot inside a dimly lit hotel room. Brooks stares into the lens and delivers a monologue that just feels off. He talks about wiping down the walls between you and me, a phrase that rose the hackles of, well, people who are chronically online, like you and me. He promises to share content with friends, calling it cool stuff, slick stuff, neat stuff, before leaning in close, dropping his voice down low and whispering that he'll also share the raw stuff. And then he ends the video with an intense, unblinking smile saying, "Let the conversation begin." The clip would circulate as an internet oddity, but what it shows was that Garth Brooks is very strange and oddly threatening on camera. The true slip of the mask was unearthed by digging through decades-old television broadcasts. As the theory escalated, sleuths discovered a 1989 interview on the Nashville network program Crook and Chase. A young Garth Brooks was promoting his second single, If Tomorrow Never Comes, and the host asked if Garth had any aspirations for acting, and his response would become, well, perfect bait for the trolls. "I told them if they ever need to be a bad guy, which is weird, I'd love to be a bad guy." And the host pushed back, suggesting that he looked too much like a good guy. Garth Brooks elaborated by saying, "Okay, I guess I'd rather kill somebody. That'd be fun." Oh boy. The heat math part of the conspiracy is the most data-driven aspect of the lore, although it's completely speculative. Internet sleuths have tried to connect Brooks to actual crimes, attempting to overlay his massive stadium tour schedules from the 1990s with clusters of unsolved disappearances and homicide. The story suggests that Brooks' extensive touring schedule provided him with the perfect alibi, an opportunity to travel the country anonymously. The theory is that as a touring musician, he would have a reason to be in different cities, allowing him to target victims and move on before investigators could connect the crimes. In 1999, Garth Brooks would introduce Chris Gaines, an Australian alternative rock musician with a fabricated backstory, dark emo hair, and of course a soul patch. The Chris Gaines persona has been co-opted by the conspiracy theory. Chris Gaines is viewed as a genuine manifestation of Brooks's fractured, darker psyche. The intense, brooding nature of Gaines' character reveals the true, sinister personality hiding between Brooks's wholesome, emotional country music superstar persona. The shift in appearance and genre is framed as a public slip of his sociopathic tendencies. Another part of the theory is the Suitcase Hypothesis, which is a purely fabricated logistical theory about how a high-profile celebrity could theoretically commit crimes and dispose of evidence while on tour. This part of the lore tries to address the problems with Brooks's extreme fame. The idea is that the logistics of a stadium tour, which would involve semi-trucks and equipment cases and the constant flow of people, could provide the necessary cover. There's a controversial early career purchase that also factors heavily into the conspiracy's lore. Early in his career, Garth Brooks purchased a massive 300-acre plot of rural land. Large land purposes are obviously common investments for sudden millionaires, but the internet takes this and turns it into something sinister. Within the lore, this massive isolated property is not a ranch or a private retreat, but a literal graveyard where the bodies are hidden. The size and rural location of the property are presented as the ideal disposal site, providing the privacy to hide evidence on a large scale. The conspiracy theory would be ignited on on episode 476 of Your Mom's House podcast. It's hosted by stand-up comedians Tom Segura and Christina P. The podcast goes through the internet's most unhinged and bizarre videos, presenting them to a massive audience that absorbs the craziness and turns it into a bunch of shared inside jokes. Tom Segura put a video onto the studio screen. It was Garth Brooks' latest promotional video, a heavily produced Facebook video announcing a sprawling North American stadium tour. The footage featured breathing heavily into the microphone, his eyes wide, his expression locked in a strange, intense grimace that looked unnatural. He told his fans that they were going to get physical playing music. He paused, looked directly into the camera, and whispered, "I like that." Tom Segura would pause the video. He would make a claim that would rewrite internet history. Staring at the frozen image of Garth Brooks, Segura declared, "What's going on is he's thinking about all the bodies he's got stacked in graves in his yard." He estimated the kill count at 200 to 300 people. The laughter in the studio was brief. The consequences of the joke, however, continue on. Listeners went to Brooks' social media profiles. They would post, "Where are the bodies, Garth?" But as the years dragged on and the country singer refused to acknowledge the story, the trollings evolved into a complex ecosystem of harassment. Comment sections for Garth Brooks stuff has become a dumping ground for people pushing the theory. Outsiders looking for a post about a charity concert would find themselves drowning in absolute gibberish. The phrases look almost like AI hallucinations. For years, the country star's public relations people have had a policy of total ignorance. Brooks continues to post his weekly Inside Studio G live streams, occasionally broadcasting her makeup done, crying over heartfelt fan letters, and talking about the magic of songwriting, ignoring the tens of thousands of comments accusing him of being a serial killer. And the silence is gasoline. On the internet, you don't feed the trolls, but you also can't ignore the trolls. With the trolls, you just can't win. The refusal to acknowledge all of this has convinced the mob that they had struck a nerve and were validated in their campaign. On a June episode of Your Mom's House, Tom Segura revealed that an inside source had confirmed that Garth Brooks was aware of the situation, and that Garth Brooks' social media management team had restricted Segura's personal Instagram account. This effectively shadow banned Segura's posts. The Garth Brooks machine had attempted to quarantine the infection, hoping to sever the head of the snake without acknowledging its existence. And this failed spectacularly. Segura, of course, weaponized his shadow ban, transforming himself into a digital martyr. He rallied his audience on the podcast with a barrage of targeted hashtags. The troll army surged, doubling their efforts to breach the algorithm and overwhelm the moderation filters. The digital war kept on. It went from the internet to real life. Trolls began purchasing expensive tickets to his concerts, smuggling in poster boards. Once the stadium cameras locked onto them to broadcast their faces onto the massive jumbotron, the fans would flip the signs to reveal that they're saying, "Where are the bodies, Garth?" The internet had joined the physical world, bringing the nightmare directly to the stage. The lore would deepen, and the joke would transcend the comment sections and enter the true crime industrial complex. By 2025, authors Matthew Cox and Pierre Rossini published Bodies in Low Places, a 226-page mock investigative book that treated the Garth Brooks as a serial killer theory with forensic seriousness. The text leaned heavily into the aesthetics of prestige true crime, featuring interviews with retired law enforcement agents, FBI profilers, criminologists, and anonymous tour roadies bound by non-disclosure agreements. The experts were coaxed into analyzing the hypothetical logistics of a touring musician doubling as an organized murderer. The line between internet meme and investigative journalism was maliciously blurred, and the dedication to the bit required an astonishing amount of labor. The joke was no longer just an internet thing. It became a fully functional cottage industry. The troll campaign would reach its high point in May 2025. Tom Segura debuted a dark comedy sketch series titled Bad Thoughts. Its true purpose was obvious to anyone familiar with the internet lore. It was a multi-million-dollar monument built solely to terrorize Garth Brooks. Segura would introduce the character Rex Henley, a global country music superstar whose look, voice, and public persona were a parody of Garth Brooks. The narrative arc of Rex Henley realized the darkest fantasies of the original 2018 podcast joke. Henley was suffering from writer's block, so he began kidnapping his own superfans directly from his massive concerts. He transports them to a remote fake Western town guarded heavily by armed mercenaries. There, he forces these starving hostages to reveal their deepest personal traumas during forced acoustic jam sessions, mining their psychological pain to find inspiration for new songs. The promotional campaign for the series was equally unhinged. To promote an upcoming stand-up show at Joe Rogan's Comedy Mothership in Austin, Texas, Segura released a poster directly parodying the iconic cover of Brooks' 1991 Diamond certified album Rope in the Wind. And after everything I've just said in this video, it absolutely shows the absurdity of this theory. The heat maps rely on a easily debunked statistical fallacy. When a musician embarks on a record-breaking stadium tour, they go to heavily populated urban areas like Chicago, Dallas, Atlanta, and Las Vegas. These massive metropolitan areas have high rates of crime and missing person reports. And also, the internet sleuths pointed to Garth Brooks' infamous Chris Gain persona as if it's evidence, are missing a much more mundane reality. It was a miscalculated marketing stunt for a film project called The Lamb that was never produced. But the lack of a factual basis has never stopped the digital mob. The survival of this story relies entirely on modern parasocial trolling. They are participating in a massive alternative reality game or bit of unfiction. The troll campaign weaponized the fundamental human desire for community, taking hundreds of strangers and binding them together through the shared harassment of Garth Brooks. Garth Brooks happens to be the perfect host for this kind of viral harassment. Garth Brooks has a mid-1990s understanding of public relations. He believes in broadcasting, not engaging. He refuses to acknowledge his trolls, and his stubborn insistence on maintaining this bizarre, sanitized, deeply emotional public facade makes him an irresistible target. If Brooks would simply post a self-aware tweet holding a shovel and winking at the camera, the joke would suffocate instantly. The oxygen of a troll campaign is the target's discomfort. By acting the way that he has, Brooks has guaranteed that this will never end. The internet does not need evidence. It does not want evidence. It only needs momentum. The mob can construct a reality so loud and so pervasive that it begins to eclipse the actual truth. They will never leave. The story is set, and the acoustic singer psychopath is trapped in the digital ether, forever staring into the lens, whispering about the raw stuff, while the internet screams back into the void. So the family still don't know where the bodies are. The comment sections are a war zone of demands for justice, buried under layers of internet irony, and Garth Brooks keeps smiling, keeps singing, and keeps packing those stadiums. Please stay spooky.